Hello and welcome to Arcs and Orcs, the podcast by Sasha Wallace, which you can find on Patreon and Spotify. Today is going to be part 3 of the anti-human trafficking lecture mini-series that I have been working on. And before we carry on where we left off with part 2, which was the plan for this episode, I actually want to bring you some breaking news that has happened out in the Congolese city of Goma. Some terrible atrocities have happened, and I want to share with you 3 different reports from 3 different online newspapers about this report. Not that they necessarily contradict each other, but they each share a slightly different set of data or information about what has happened. So the first, the title of this episode is going to be The Atrocities Against People of Colour. Today's date is Friday, the 7th of February 2025. This first report is from the Daily Mail online, dailymail.co.uk. I will post the links in the description box and the show notes below. This podcast is streaming on Patreon and Spotify. You can find all the podcast episodes by going to patreon.com/The Hero's Journey MC. Patreon.com/The Hero's Journey MC. So, Tom Cotterill, journalist for the Daily Mail Online, published this report on the 5th of February 2025. The report begins, hundreds of women were raped and then burnt alive after Rwandan-backed rebels stormed into the Congolese city of Goma, it has emerged. The atrocity took place during a mass jailbreak from the Munzenze jail last week, as M23 fighters clashed with the Congolese army during deadly gun battles. According to the UN, the female inmates were butchered in their wing in the notoriously overcrowded prison after men forced their way in and went on a rampage. While thousands of male criminals managed to flee, the area reserved for women was torched to the ground. Viviane van der Peer, the deputy head of the UN peacekeeping force in Goma, has said. Images taken shortly after M23 fighters reached the center of Goma showed vast plumes of black smoke rising from the jail on January 27 of 2025. As long lines of men sprinted away from the inferno. It's unclear who was behind the slaughter of the female inmates, as UN peacekeepers have been barred from entering the site by M23 rebels. However, reports have suggested that at least 141 jailed women were murdered, along with 28 young children who had been in detention with their mothers. Describing the carnage, Ms. van der Peer said the figure could be higher. There was a major prison breakout of 4,000 escaped prisoners. A few hundred women were also in that prison. They were all raped and then they set fire to the women's wing. They all died afterwards, she said. I'm just scrolling through some of the images. There's an image of black plumes of smoke arising from the Munzenze Prison in Goma as the fire was raging on the 27th of January. Then there is a picture of M23 rebels potentially backed by Rwandan forces, Rwandan military forces. A claim that is being disputed by Rwanda, but asserted by the UN, that they are being backed by Rwanda. The last photo is displaced women and children sit with their belongings near a church where they're taking refuge following the intensification of fighting between M23 rebels and the Congolese army in Goma. The report continues. Local reports claim that during the mayhem, inmates were gunned down by guards as they attempted to stop the mass breakout. A week on from the rampage, and the Munzenze jail lies in ruins and is completely empty, with the guards having deserted their posts. A large part of the facility has been destroyed by the blaze, including the prison's administration's office. The prison was also looted in the wake of the escape. Prior to the incident, Munzenze Central Prison housed around 4,400 inmates, well beyond its capacity. On Tuesday, it emerged that 2,000 bodies were still awaiting burial in Goma after the M23 rebels seized the city, which is the capital of the Democratic Republic of the Congo's North Kivu Province. In a disturbing new claim following the uprising, the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the OHCHR, warned that sexual violence is being used as a weapon of war by rival armed groups in Goma. The city, home to 1 million people, is now under the complete control of M23 fighters. On Monday, the rebel group declared a ceasefire would begin on Tuesday for humanitarian reasons. The UN previously said that almost 2,900 had been injured during the uprising, while local estimates suggest over 2,000 have been killed. The alliance of rebel groups, known as the Congo River Alliance, which M23 is a member of, has previously accused the Congolese military of killing people using aircraft to bomb areas that it holds. The organization added it does not intend to seize any further territory, despite saying otherwise last week, and it will hold its position. In a statement, the alliance said, "We reiterate our commitment to protecting and defending the civilian population and our positions." Prior to this, fears have been mounting that Rwanda was determined to take more territory from its vast neighbor, with M23 forces steadily pushing south towards Bukavu, the capital of South Kivu Province, 120 miles from the besieged Goma. Responding to news of the unexpected ceasefire, Ms. van der Peer said, "I hope it stays that way because they, the M23, are already moving in the direction of Bukavu with reinforcements and heavy weaponry, which can be seen passing along in the streets of Goma. If they retreat, that's good news. Otherwise, we'll have a new clash with potentially thousands of additional deaths." Regional conflict has seen hundreds of thousands of people displaced over the last 3 years. Since the start of 2025, more than 400,000 people have been forced to flee from their homes, according to the UN's Refugee Agency. Rwandan President Paul Kagame, who also heads up the Rwanda Defense Force, said he did not know if his country's troops were in the DR Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo. "There are many things I don't know, but if you want to ask me, is there a problem in the Congo that concerns Rwanda, and that Rwanda would do anything to protect itself, I'd say 100%, he told CNN on Monday. Meanwhile, human rights groups have been calling for more pressure on Rwanda to back down. The DR Congo's communications minister called for the international community to impose sanctions on Rwanda. A strong decision must be taken not only to condemn, but to stop what Rwanda is doing, because it is not acceptable if you want to preserve peace in Africa and in our region, Patrick Muyaya told Reuters. Sanctions are the minimum. And that is the end of the article on the Daily Mail. I'm now going to go to the next article that came up for me. And let me just jump back because it has... Okay, the next article is from the Hindustan Times, which is hindustantimes.com. And the article is written by, edited by Nayanika Sengupta on February the 5th of this year. So the headline, hundreds of women raped and burned alive in a Congo jailbreak amid rebel conflict. The Rwanda-backed M23 rebels last week captured regional capital Goma in an anarchic and mineral-rich part of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And I think the fact that mineral-rich appears right here in the top paragraph is an interesting addition by this editor, an interesting angle that they're alluding to. And also that this is the second report that says Rwandan-backed rebels, Rwanda-backed M23 rebels, which is something that Rwanda are saying is not the case, that they are not supporting the M23 rebel group who have taken over the capital of Goma, the capital of Rwanda, of Congo, DR. We'll see how this differs when we get to the last report, which is from The Guardian online. So Hindustan Times says hundreds of women inmates at Munzenze Prison of Congo's Goma were reportedly burned alive after being raped during the chaos after Rwandan-backed rebel groups entered the Congolese city this week, leading to a surge in human rights violations. Rwanda-backed M23 rebels last week captured regional city capital Goma in an anarchic and mineral-rich part of Democratic Republic of Congo, where millions were killed and displaced in the wars of 1996 to 1997 and then 1998 to 2003. Among human rights violations those conflicts have led to, summary executions, bombing of displacement camps are some, along with reports of gang rapes and other sexual violence, according to UN Rights Office, the OHCHR. Hundreds of female inmates were attacked in their wing inside Goma's Munzenze Prison during a mass jailbreak, according to a senior UN official cited in a report by The Guardian. That's the report we're going to look at next. As per Vivian van der Peer, the deputy head of the UN peacekeeping force based in Goma, several thousand men managed to escape from the prison, but the area for women was set ablaze. Images that were reportedly taken shortly after the M23 rebels breached into Goma showed plumes of black smoke arising from the prison on the morning of January the 27th. What is beneath that is actually a video of those plumes of smoke, which you can watch on X.com. UN peacekeepers have been unable to access the prison to investigate the incident further because of restrictions imposed by the Rwandan-backed M23 rebels. While there are not many details on the incident, the atrocities are said to be the worst of the recent M23-led conflict in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. The report said that about 2,000 bodies could still be awaiting burial in Goma as of Tuesday. There was a major prison breakout of 4,000 escaped prisoners. A few hundred women were also in that prison. They were all raped and then they set fire to the women's wing. They all died afterwards. The report quoted as saying by Van der Peer, who is now in Goma with thousands of UN peacekeeping troops deployed to protect the citizens. The UN Human Rights Council will hold a special meeting to discuss the situation in Goma, a UN statement said on Tuesday. The Democratic Republic of Congo requested the session and it would take place on February the 7th in Geneva, the UN statement has said. That is today. February 7th is today. So that event should be taking place, a session at the Geneva UN Member Council. So far, 27 countries have supported the meeting going ahead, surpassing the requirement for a third of the 47-member council, it is said. While the council has no legally binding power, its debates carry political weight and criticism can raise global pressure on governments to change course. Sometimes investigations mandated by the Council can lead to prosecutions for war crimes in international courts. So, on to, linked from that article is the original report from theguardian.com. This report, I don't know if there is an author name, but this is the main report from The Guardian online. This atrocity of hundreds of women raped and burned to death after Goma prison is set on fire follows the escape of thousands of male inmates amid chaos as Rwandan-backed M23 rebels seize the eastern DRC city. The female inmates were attacked in their wing inside Goma's Munzenze Prison during a mass jailbreak, according to senior UN official. The deputy head of the UN peacekeeping force based in Goma, Vivian van der Peer, said that while several thousand men managed to escape from the prison, the area reserved for women was set on fire. The images above and the video that I mentioned shows lots of male prisoners running from the prison as Munzenze is enveloped by fire. Images taken shortly after Rwandan-backed M23 rebels reached the center of Goma reveal vast plumes of black smoke rising from the prison on the morning of 27th of January. Although details of the incident are scarce, the atrocity appears to be the worst of the recent M23-led conflict in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. UN peacekeepers, however, have been unable to visit the prison to investigate further because of restrictions imposed by the M23 rebels, meaning the identity of the perpetrators remains unclear. On Tuesday, it emerged that about 2,000 bodies were still awaiting burial in Goma after M23 fighters seized Goma, the capital of the DRC's North Kivu Province, on the 27th of Jan. Van der Peer, who is now based in Goma with thousands of UN peacekeeping troops deployed to protect the citizens, said there was a major prison breakout of 4,000 escaped prisoners. A few hundred women were also in that prison. I think it's very interesting that the Daily Mail is the only one that actually is able to pick up somehow that 141 women were killed and 28 children that were in detention with them were killed. No other report has actually said they've been able to get any numbers. All of the women were raped, and then they set fire to the women's wing, and all the women perished, and all the children. This week, the UN Office for the High Commissioner for UN Rights, Human Rights, the OHCHR, warned that sexual violence specifically is being used as a weapon of war by rival armed groups in Goma. The city, home to more than 1 million people, is under the total control of M23 forces. But in an unforeseen development late on Monday, the militia has announced a unilateral ceasefire. Until then, fears had been mounting that Rwanda was determined to take more territory from its vast neighbour. The M23 forces steadily heading south towards Bukavu, the capital of South Kivu Province, 120 miles or 190 kilometers from Goma. A statement from a political military coalition called the Alliance Fleuve Congo, or Congo River Alliance, of which M23 is a member, announced it had no intention of taking control of Bukavu or other localities. Responding to news of the unexpected ceasefire, Van der Peer said, "I hope it stays that way because they, the M23, are already moving in the direction of Bukavu with reinforcements and heavy weaponry, which can be seen passing along in the streets of Goma." Even though they've said that they're not planning on taking over. If they retreat, that's good news, otherwise we'll have a new clash with potentially thousands of additional deaths. She said M23 may have had a sudden rethink after reinforcements from Burundi arrived in Bukavu and a nearby airport was used by the Congolese Air Force. The Burundians have sent 2,000 extra troops to Bukavu, and they are very good fighters. I think M23 is currently rethinking their next steps. Despite evidence to the contrary, Rwanda denies it is backing the M23 or that its forces have crossed into eastern Congo. However, Van der Peer, part of the UN peacekeeping force known as MONUSCO, said her colleagues have spotted Rwandan soldiers during patrols. Van der Peer urged that UN Security Council must increase their pressure on Rwanda. We really need to get back to the negotiating table, and that is only possible if the members of the Security Council and other important countries exert enough pressure on Rwanda and Congo, she said. Previously, another senior UN official has speculated that the DRC's neighbour wanted to annex a large chunk of DRC, a chunk larger than Rwanda itself. This is a long-term policy to get the broader Kivu area into the sphere of Rwandan influence and later under complete administrative control, they said. Speaking before the ceasefire was announced late on Monday, Van der Peer said she was anxious about reports that groups were preparing for a counterattack. We already have reports that in certain places people are gathering and organizing. Van der Peer said that she is in constant dialogue with M23 officers in charge of Goma and that humanitarian conditions in the city are dire. Crossing the city was difficult, she said. They, the M23, allow us to bring food and water to our bases, but apart from that, we can barely move around. That report doesn't say who wrote it or when. Oh, I tell a lie, it's on the side. It was written for theguardian.com and theguardian.org by Hust Bastmeier and Saskia Huten and Mark Townsend on Wednesday, the 5th of Feb, 2025. I am going to end this particular section of this episode here, and I will pick it up with the next section, but I was very compelled to share this particular atrocity on this podcast. If you feel able to share this podcast in order to share these events wider, or if you feel more taken to have a look at these reports online. These reports all came out on the 5th of February. It is now the 7th. There should be, as planned, a UN Council session, member session today to discuss what is happening and hopefully bring more awareness and more support, and obviously drive humanitarian aid into this area. I will absolutely pick up on whatever reports I can find following that UN meeting and any further developments in the area. But for now, I pray, I send all my prayers and healing to the lives lost of those 141 women and 28 children. Those are the numbers that we currently know. It does appear that many of the men were also killed during the mass breakout. 4,400 people were apparently in that prison, including the 141 women and 28 children that died in the women's wing that was set ablaze after the jailbreak. It does appear that the majority of the inmates escaped. That may even be part of the M23 rebels' plan as they take over the Congolese city of Goma, which has all taken place in the last 10 days in the eastern city of the Democratic Republic of Congo. This is Sasha Wallace. This is the end of part 3 on the Arcs and Orcs podcast. Thank you very much for listening.